Below zero. Ollie Hazelwood. Jove. New York. For Shep and Celia. Still with no polar bears, but with lots of love. Prologue. Svalbard Islands, Norway. Present. I dream of an ocean. Not the Arctic though. Not the one right here in Norway, with its close-packed frothy waves constantly crashing against the coasts of the Svalbard archipelago. It's perhaps a bit unfair of me, the Barents Sea is perfectly worth dreaming of. So are its floating icebergs and inhospitable permafrost shores. All around me there is nothing but stark cerulean beauty, and if this is the place where I die alone and shivering and bruised and pretty damn hungry, well, I have no reason to bitch. After all, blue was always my favorite color. And yet, the dreams seem to disagree. I lie here in my half-awake, half-unconscious state. I feel my body yield precious degrees of heat. I watch the ultraviolet morning light reach inside the crevasse that trapped me hours ago, and the only ocean I can dream of is the one on Mars. Dr. Arroyo. Can you hear me? I mean, this entire thing is almost laughable. I am a NASA scientist. I have a doctorate in aerospace engineering and several publications in the field of planetary geology. At any given time, my brain is a jumbled maelstrom of stray thoughts on massive volcanism, crystal fluid dynamics, and the exact kind of anti-radiation equipment one would need to start a medium-sized human colony on Kepler 452b. I promise I'm not being conceited when I say that I know pretty much all there is to know about Mars. Including the fact that there are no oceans on it, and the idea that there ever were is highly controversial among scientists. So, yeah. My near-death dreams are ridiculous and scientifically inaccurate. I would laugh about it, but I have a sprained ankle, and I'm approximately 10 feet below the ground. It seems better to just save my energy for what's to come. I never really believed in an afterlife, but who knows? Better hedge my bets. Dr. Arroyo, do you copy? The problem is, it calls to me, this non-existent ocean on Mars. I feel the pull of it deep inside my belly, and it warms me even here, at the icy tip of the world. Its turquoise waters and rust-tinted coastlines are approximately 200 million kilometers from the place where I'll die and rot, but I cannot shake the feeling that they want me closer. There is an ocean, a network of gullies, an entire giant planet full of iron oxide, and they're all calling to me. Asking me to give up. Lean in. Let go. Dr. Arroyo. And then there are the voices. Random, improbable voices from my past. Well, okay, a voice. It's always the same, deep and rumbling with no discernible accent and well-pronounced consonants. I don't really mind it, I must say. I'm not sure why my brain has decided to impose it on me just now, considering that it belongs to someone who doesn't like me much, someone I might like even less, but it's a pretty good voice. A+. Worth listening to in a death's door situation. Even though Ian Floyd was the one who never wanted me to come here to Svalbard in the first place. Even though the last time we were together he was stubborn and unkind and unreasonable, and now he seems to sound only. Hannah. Close. Is this really Ian Floyd? Sounding close. Impossible. My brain has frozen into stupidity. It must really be all over for me. My time has come, the end is nigh, and... Hannah. I'm coming for you. My eyes spring open. I'm not dreaming anymore. Chapter 1. Johnson Space Center, Houston, U.S. 1 year ago. On my very first day at NASA, at some point between the HR intake and a tour of the Electromagnetic Compliance Studies building, some overzealous newly hired engineer turns to the rest of us and asks, "Don't you feel like your entire life has led you to this moment? Like you were meant to be here?" Aside from eager beaver, there are 14 of us starting today. 14 of us fresh out of top 5 graduate programs and prestigious internships and CV beefing industry jobs accepted exclusively to look more attractive during NASA's next round of recruitment. There are 14 of us, and the 13 that aren't me are all nodding enthusiastically. Always knew I'd end up at NASA ever since I was like 5, says a shy-looking girl. She's been sticking by my side for the entire morning, I assume because we're the only 2 non-dudes in the group. I must say, I don't mind it too much. Perhaps it's because she's a computer engineer while I'm aerospace, which means there's a good chance that I won't see much of her after today. Her name is Alexis, and she's wearing a NASA necklace on top of a NASA t-shirt that only barely covers the NASA tattoo on her upper arm. I bet it's the same for you, Hannah, she adds, and I smile at her, because Sadie and Mara insisted that I shouldn't be my resting bitch self now that we live in different time zones. They are convinced that I need to make new friends, and I have reluctantly agreed to put in a solid effort just to get them to shut up. So I nod at Alexis like I know exactly what she means, while privately, I think, not really. When people find out that I have a PhD, they tend to assume that I was always an academically driven child. That I cruised through school my entire life in a constant effort to overachieve. That I did so well as a student, I decided to remain one long after I could have booked it and freed myself from the shackles of homework and nights spent cramming for never-ending tests. People assume, and for the most part I let them believe what they want. Caring what others think is a lot of work, and with a handful of exceptions I'm not a huge fan of work. The truth, though, is quite the opposite. I hated school at first sight with the direct consequence that school hated the sullen, listless child that I was right back. In the first grade, I refused to learn how to write my name, even though Hannah is only 3 letters repeated twice. In junior high, I set a school record for the highest number of consecutive detention days. What happens when you decide to take a stand and not do homework for any of your classes because they are too boring, too difficult, too useless, or all of the above? Until the end of my sophomore year, I couldn't wait to graduate and leave all of school behind: the books, the teachers, the grades, the cliques. Everything. I didn't really have a plan for after, except for leaving now behind. I had this feeling, my entire life, that I was never going to be enough. I internalized pretty early that I was never going to be as good, as smart, as lovable, as wanted as my perfect older brother and my flawless older sister, and after several failed attempts at measuring up, I just decided to stop trying. Stop caring too. By the time I was in my teens, I just wanted. Well, to this day, I'm not sure what I wanted at 15. For my parents to stop fretting about my inadequacies, maybe. For my peers to stop asking me how I could be the sibling of 2 former all-star valedictorians. I wanted to stop feeling as though I were rotting in my own aimlessness, and I wanted my head to stop spinning all the time. I was confused, contradictory, and looking back, probably a shitty teenager to be around. Sorry, Mom and Dad, and the rest of the world. No hard feelings, eh? Anyhow, I was a pretty lost kid. Until Brian McDonald, a junior, decided that asking me to homecoming by opening with "Your eyes are as blue as a sunset on Mars" might get me to say yes. For the record, it's a horrifying pickup line. Do not recommend. Use sparingly. Use not at all, especially if, like me, the person you're trying to pick up has brown eyes and is fully aware of it. But what was an undeniable low point in the history of flirting ended up serving, if you'll forgive a very self-indulgent metaphor, as a meteorite of sorts. It crashed into my life and changed its trajectory. In the following years, I would find out that all of my colleagues at NASA have their own origin story. Their very own space rock that altered the course of their existence and pushed them to become engineers, physicists, biologists, astronauts. It's usually an elementary school trip to the Kennedy Space Center. A Carl Sagan book under the Christmas tree. A particularly inspiring science teacher at summer camp. My encounter with Brian McDonald falls under that umbrella. It just happens to involve a guy who allegedly went on to moderate incel message boards on Reddit, which makes it just a tad lamer. People obsessed with space are split into 2 distinct camps. The ones who want to go to space and crave the zero gravity, the space suits drinking their own recycled urine. And there are people like me, what we want, oftentimes what we've wanted since our frontal lobes were still undeveloped enough to have us thinking that toe shoes are a good fashion statement, is to know about space. At the beginning it's simple stuff: what's it made of? Where does it end? Why do the stars not fall and crash onto our heads? Then once you've read enough, the big topics come in: dark matter, multiverse, black holes. That's when you realize how little we understand about this giant thing we're part of. When you start thinking about whether you can help produce some new knowledge. And that's how you end up at NASA. So, back to Brian McDonald. I didn't go to homecoming with him. I didn't go to homecoming at all, because it wasn't really my scene, and even if it had been, I was grounded for failing an English midterm, and even if I hadn't been, fuck Brian McDonald and his poorly researched pickup lines. However, something about the whole thing stuck with me. Why would a sunset be blue? And on a red planet, no less. It seemed like something worth knowing. So I spent the night in my room, Googling dust particles in the Martian atmosphere. By the end of the week, I'd signed up for a library card and devoured 3 books. By the end of the month, I was studying calculus to understand concepts like thrust over time and harmonic series. By the end of the year, I had a goal. Hazy, confused, not yet fully defined, but a goal nonetheless. For the first time in my life. I'll spare you most of the grueling details, but I spent the rest of high school busting ass to make up for the ass I hadn't busted for the previous decade. Just picture an 80s training montage, but instead of running in the snow and doing pull-ups with a repurposed broomstick, I was hard at work on books and YouTube lectures. And it was hard work. Wanting to understand concepts like HR diagrams or synodic periods or syzygy did not make them any easier to grasp. Before, I'd never really tried. But at the tender age of 16, I was confronted with the unbearable turmoil that comes with trying your best and realizing that sometimes it simply isn't enough. As much as it pains me to say it, I don't have an IQ of 130. To really understand the books I wanted to read, I had to review the same concepts over, and fucking over again. Initially I coasted on the high of finding out. new things. But after a while my motivation began to wane, and I started to wonder what I was even doing. I was studying a bunch of really basic science stuff to be able to graduate to more advanced science stuff, so that one day I'd actually know all the science stuff about Mars and what then? Go on Jeopardy! And pick space for 500. Didn't really seem worth it. Then August of 2012 happened. When the Curiosity rover approached the Martian atmosphere, I stayed up until 1 a.m. I chugged down 2 bottles of Diet Coke, ate peanuts for good luck, and when the landing maneuver began, I bit into my lip until it bled. The moment it safely touched the ground I screamed, I laughed, I cried, and then got grounded for a week for waking up the entire household the night before my brother left for his Peace Corps trip, but I didn't care. In the following months I devoured every little piece of news NASA issued on Curiosity's mission, and as I wondered about who was behind the images of the Gale crater, the interpretation of the raw data, the reports on the molecular composition of the Aeolus Palace, my hazy undefinable goal began to solidify. NASA. NASA was the place to be. The summer between junior and senior years, I found a ranking of the 100 best engineering programs in the US. And decided to apply to the top 20. You should probably extend your reach. Add a few safety schools, my guidance counselor told me. I mean, your SATs are really good and your GPA has improved a lot, but you have a bunch of long pause for throat-clearing academic red flags on your permanent record. I thought about it for a minute. Who would have figured that being a little shit for the first 1.5 decades of my life would bring lasting consequences? Not me. Okay. Fine. Let's do the top 35. As it turns out, I didn't need to. I got accepted to a whopping, drumroll please, one top 20 school. A real winner, huh? I don't know if they misfiled my application, misplaced half of my transcripts, or had a brain fart in which the entire admissions office temporarily forgot what a promising student is supposed to look like. I put down my deposit and approximately 45 seconds after getting my letter told Georgia Tech that I'd be attending. No backsies. So I moved to Atlanta, and I gave it my all. I chose the majors and the minors I knew NASA would want to see on a CV. I got the federal internships. I studied hard enough to ace the tests, did the fieldwork, applied to grad school, wrote the thesis. When I look back at the last 10 years, school and schoolwork are pretty much all that stand out, with the notable exception of meeting Sadie and Mara and of begrudgingly watching them carve spots for themselves in my heart. God, they take up so much room. It's like space is your whole personality, the girl I casually hooked up with during most of my sophomore year of undergrad told me. It was after I explained that no, thank you, I wasn't interested in going out for coffee to meet her friends because of a lecture on Kalpanachala I was planning to attend. Do you have any other interests? She asked. I threw her a quick nope, waved goodbye, and wasn't too surprised when, the following week, she didn't reply to my offer to meet up. After all, I clearly couldn't give her what she wanted. Is this really enough for you? Just having sex with me when you feel like it, and ignoring me the rest of the time? The guy I slept with during the last semester of my PhD asked. You just seem, I don't know, extremely emotionally unavailable. I think maybe he was right, because it's barely been a year and I can't quite recall his face. Exactly a decade after Brian McDonald miscolored my eyes, I applied for a NASA position. I got an interview, then a job offer, and now I'm here. But unlike the other new hires, I don't feel like Mars and I were always meant to be. There was no guarantee, no invisible string of destiny tethering me to this job, and I'm positive that I made my way here through sheer brute force, but does it matter? Nope. Not even a little bit. So I turned to look at Alexis. This time her NASA necklace, her t-shirt, her tattoo, they pull a sincere smile out of me. It's been a long journey here. The destination was never a sure thing, but I have arrived and I'm uncharacteristically, sincerely, satisfyingly happy. Feels like home, I say, and the enthusiastic way she nods reverberates deep down inside my chest. At one point in history, every single member of the Mars exploration program had their first day at NASA too. They stood in the very spot where I'm standing right now. Gave their banking information for direct deposit, had an unflattering picture taken for their badges, shook hands with the HR reps. Complained about Houston's weather, bought terrible coffee from the cafeteria, rolled their eyes at visitors doing touristy things, let the Saturn V rocket take their breath away. Every single member of the Mars exploration program did this just like I will. I step into the conference room where some fancy NASA big shot is scheduled to talk to us, take in the window view of the Johnson Space Center and the remnants of objects that were once launched across the stars, and feel like every single inch of this place is thrilling, fascinating, electrifying, intoxicating. Perfect. Then I turn around. And of course, find the very last person I wanted to see. Chapter 2. Caltech Campus, Pasadena, California. 5 years, 6 months ago. I'm finishing my initial semester of grad school when I first meet Ian Floyd, and it's Helena Harding's fault. Dr. Harding is a lot of things, my friend Mara's PhD mentor. One of the most celebrated environmental scientists of the 21st century. A generally crabby human being. And, last but not least, my water resources engineering professor. It is, quite honestly, an all-around shitty class mandatory. Irrelevant to my academic, professional, or personal interests. And highly focused on the intersection of the hydrologic cycle and the design of urban storm sewer systems. For the most part, I spend the lectures wishing I were anywhere else in line at the DMV at the market buying magic beans, taking analytical transonic and supersonic aerodynamics. I do the least I can to pull a low B, which, in the unjust scam of graduate school, is the minimum passing grade until week 3 or 4 of classes, when Dr. Harding introduces a new cruel assignment that has fuck all to do with water. Find someone who has the engineering job you want at the end of your PhD. And do an informational interview with them, she tells us. Then write a report about it. Due by the end of the semester. Don't come to me bitching about it during office hours, because I will call security to escort you out. I have a feeling that she's looking at me while saying it. It's probably just my guilty conscience. Honestly, I'm just going to ask Helena if I can interview her. But if you want, I think I have a cousin or something at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, Mara says offhandedly later that day while we're sitting on the steps outside the Beckman Auditorium having a quick lunch before heading back to our labs. I wouldn't say that we're close, but I've decided that I like her. A lot. At this point, my grad school attitude is some mild variant of I did not come here to make friends. I don't feel in competition with the rest of the program, but neither am I particularly invested in anything that isn't my work in the aeronautics lab, including getting acquainted with other students, or, learning their names. I'm fairly sure that my lack of interest is strongly broadcasted, but either Mara didn't pick up the transmission or she's gleefully ignoring it. She and Sadie found each other in the first couple of days, and then for reasons I don't fully understand, decided to find me. Hence Mara sitting next to me, telling me about her JPL contacts. A cousin or something? I ask, curious. It seems a bit sketchy. You think? Yeah, I'm not sure. She shrugs and continues to make her way through a Tupperware of broccoli, an apple, and approximately 2 fucktons of Cheez-Its. I don't really know much about him. His parents divorced, then people in my family had arguments and stopped talking to each other. There was a lot of prime Floyd dysfunction happening, so I haven't actually spoken to him in years. But I heard from one of my other cousins that he was working on that thing that landed on Mars back when we were in high school. It was called something like contingency, or carpentry, or crudity. The Curiosity rover. Yes. Maybe. I put my sandwich down. Swallow my bite. Clear my throat. Your cousin or something was on the Curiosity rover team. I think so. Do the dates add up? Maybe it was some kind of summer internship. But honestly, it might just be Floyd family lore. I have an aunt who insists that we're related to the Finnish royals, and according to Wikipedia there are no Finnish royals. So. She shrugs and pops another handful of Cheez-Its in her mouth. Would you like me to ask around though? For the assignment. I nod. And I don't think much about it until a month or so later. By then, through means that I am still unable to divine, Mara and Sadie have managed to worm their way into my heart, causing me to amend my previous I did not come here to make friends stance to a slightly altered I did not come here to make friends but hurt my weird Cheez-It friend or my other weird soccer friend, and I will beat you up with a lead pipe till you piss blood for the rest of your life. Truculent. Perhaps. I feel little, but surprisingly deeply. By the way, I sent you my cousin or something's contact info a while ago, Mara tells me one night. We're at the cheapest grad bar we've been able to find. She's on her second Midori sour of the night. Did you get it? I raise my eyebrow. Is that the random string of numbers you emailed me 3 days ago? With no subject line, no text, no explanations. The one I figured was just you tracking your lottery dream numbers. Sounds like it, yeah. Sadie and I exchange a long look. Hey, you ungrateful goblin, I had to call about 15 people I'd sworn never to talk to again to get Ian's number. And I had to have my evil great Aunt Delphina promise to blackmail him into saying yes once you reach out to ask for a meeting. So you better use that number, and you better play the Mega Millions. If you win, Sadie added, we split 3 ways. Of course. I hide my smile in my glass. What's he like anyway? Who? The cousin or something? Ian, you said. Yup. Ian Floyd. Mara thinks about it for a second. Can't really say, because I've met him at like 2 Thanksgivings 15 years ago, before his parents split. Then his mom moved him to Canada and I don't even know, honestly. The only thing I remember is that he was tall. But he was also a few years older than me. So maybe he's actually 3 feet. Oh, also his hair is more brown. Which is kind of rare for a Floyd. I know it's scientifically unsound, but our brand of ginger is not recessive. Great Aunt Delphina's emotional manipulation game is clearly on point because when my assignment's deadline approaches and I text Ian Floyd in a panic, asking for an informational interview whatever the hell that is, he replies within hours with an enthusiastic, "Ian, sure. Hannah, thanks. I'm assuming you're in Houston. Should we do virtual? Skype. Zoom. FaceTime. Ian, I'm in Pasadena at JPL for the next 3 days, but virtual works. The Jet Propulsion Lab." I drum my fingers on my mattress pondering. Virtual would be so much easier. And it would be shorter. But as much as I hate the idea of writing a report for Helena's class, I do want to ask this guy a million questions about curiosity. Plus he's Mara's mysterious relative, and my curiosity is piqued. No pun intended. "Hannah, let's meet in person. The least I can do is buy you coffee. Sound good?" No reply for a few minutes. And then a very succinct "that works." For some reason, it makes me smile. My first thought upon entering the coffee shop is that Mara is full of shit. To the brim. The second, I should really double check the text Ian sent me. Make sure that he really said I'll be wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt like I seem to remember. Of course it would be a little redundant, especially considering that the coffee shop where he asked to meet is currently populated by only 3 people, a barista, busy doing a pen and paper Sudoku like it's 2007. Me standing in the entrance and looking around, confused. And a man sitting at the table closest to the entrance, gazing pensively through the glass windows. He's wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt, which would suggest Ian. The problem. His hair is the problem. Because despite what Mara said, it's most definitely not brown. Maybe a fraction of a shade darker than her bright, carroty orange, but really not brown. I'm ready to dial her number and demand to know what ridiculous ginger scale the Floyds operate on when the man slowly stands and asks, "Hannah?" I have no idea how tall Ian is, but he's much closer to 8 feet than to 3. And I find it very interesting that Mara claims to barely know him, considering that they look like they could be siblings, not just because of the aggressively red hair, but also the dark blue eyes and the dusting of freckles over pale skin. And I blink. Then I blink again. If 3 seconds ago someone had asked me whether I'm the type to multiple blink at the sight of some guy, I'd have laughed in their face. This guy though. I guess I stand corrected. Ian. I smile, recovering from the surprise. Mara's cousin. He frowns as if momentarily blanking on Mara's name. Yes. He nods. Only once. Apparently, he adds, which makes me laugh. He waits for me to take a seat across from him before folding back in his chair. I notice that he doesn't hold out his hand, nor does he smile. Interesting. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." "No problem." His voice is low-pitched but clear. Deep timbre. Confident. Polite but not too friendly. I'm usually fairly good at reading people, and my guess for him is that he's not quite enthused to be here. He'd probably rather be doing whatever it is that he came to California to do, but he's a nice guy, and he's planning to make a valiant effort to avoid letting me know. He just doesn't seem to be particularly good at faking it, which is kinda cute. "I hope I didn't mess up your day." He shakes his head in obvious lie, and I take the opportunity to study him. He seems quiet. The silent type, aloof, a little stiff. Big, more lumberjack than engineer. I briefly wonder if he's military personnel, but the day-old stubble on his face tells me it's unlikely. And such an intriguing, handsome face it is. His nose looks like it was broken at some point, maybe in a fight or a sports injury, and never bothered to heal back quite perfectly. His hair red is short and a little mussed, more I've been up working since 6 a.m. Then artful styling. I watch him scratch his big neck, then cross his wide biceps on his broad chest. He gives me a patient, expectant look like he's fully committed to answering all my questions. He is physically the opposite of me. Of my small bones and tan complexion. My hair, eyes, sometimes even my soul, are black hole dark. And here he is, Martian red and ocean blue. "What can I get you?" a voice asks. I turn and find Sudoku Boy standing right next to our table. Right. Coffee place. Where people consume beverages. "Iced tea, please." He walks away without a word, and I look at Ian once again. I'm itching to text Mara. "Your cousin looks like a slightly jacked version of Prince Harry. Maybe you should have kept in touch." So. I cross my hands and lean my elbows on the table. "What does she have on you?" He tilts his head. "She. Great Aunt Delphina." He blinks twice. I smile and continue, "I mean, it's a Thursday afternoon. You're in California for a handful of days. I'm sure you have something better to do than meet up with your long-lost cousin's friend. His eyes widen for a split second. Then his expression levels back to neutral. It's fine. Is it an embarrassing baby pic? He shakes his head. I don't mind helping out. I see. A baby video then. He's silent for a moment before saying, as I said, it's not a problem. He looks like he isn't used to people pushing him, which is unsurprising. There is something subtly removed about him. Vaguely distant and intimidating. Like he's not quite reachable. It makes me want to get closer and poke. A baby video of you. Running around in the kiddie pool. Picking your nose. Rummaging around the back of your diaper. Sudoku boy drops off my iced tea in a plastic cup. Ian's eyes follow him for a few seconds, then return to mine with an interesting mix of stoic resignation. It was more of a toddler video, he says cautiously, like he's surprising even himself. Oh. I grin into my tea. It's both too sweet and too sour. With a subtle aftertaste of gross. Do tell. You don't want to know. Oh, I'm positive I do. It's bad. You're really selling it to me. The left corner of his mouth curves upward, a small hint of amusement that's not quite fully there yet. I have an odd stray thought, I bet his smile is lopsided. Beautiful too. The video was taken at a Lowe's. With my older brother's new camcorder sometime in the late 90s, he tells me. At a Lowe's. Can't be that bad, then. He sighs, impassive. I was around 3 or 4. And they had one of those bathroom displays. The ones with model sinks and showers and vanities. And toilets, naturally. I press my lips together. This is going to be fun. Naturally. I don't really remember what happened, but apparently I needed to use the restroom. And when I saw the display I was inspired. No way. In my defense, I was very young. He scratches his nose and I laugh. Oh my god. With no concept of sewage systems. Right. Sure. Honest mistake. I cannot stop laughing. How did Great Aunt Delphina get a copy of the video? Officially unclear. But I'm fairly sure my brother made CDs of it. Sent them to local TV stations and whatnot. He gestures vaguely, and his forearm is dusted with freckles and pale red hair. I want to grab his wrist, hold it in front of my eyes, study it at my leisure. Trace, smell, touch. I haven't spent a holiday with the Floyd side of the family in 20 years, but I'm told that the video is a source of great entertainment for all age groups at Thanksgiving. I bet it's the pièce de résistance. I bet they press play right after the turducken comes out. Yeah. You'd probably win. He seems quietly resigned. A big man with a put-upon but enduring air. In an utterly charming way. But how do you blackmail someone from this? How much worse can it get? He sighs again. His broad shoulders lift, then fall. When my aunt called, she briefly mentioned uploading it on Facebook. Tagging the NASA official page. I gasp into my hand. I shouldn't laugh. This is horrible. But. Are you serious? It's not a healthy family. No shit. He shrugs, like he's past caring. At least they're not trying to extort money out of me yet. Right. I nod solemnly and collect my features into what hopefully passes for a compassionate, respectful expression. The assignment I told you about is for my water resources class, so this is surprisingly on topic. And I am truly sorry that you got stuck with meeting your little cousin's friend because you publicly urinated in a Lowe's when you barely knew how to talk. Ian's eyes settle on me, as if to size me up. I thought I had his full attention from the moment I sat down, but I realized that I was wrong. For the first time, he's looking at me like he's interested in actually seeing me. He studies me, assesses me, and my first impression of him detached, distant instantly evaporates. There is something nearly palpable about his presence, a warm, tingling sensation climbing up my spine. I don't mind, he says again. I smile because I know that this time he means it. Good. I push my tea to the side. So, what would you be doing right now, if 3-year-old you had known about sanitary sewers? This time his smile is a tad more defined. I'm winning him over, which is good, very good, because I'm rapidly developing a thing for the contrast between his eyelashes, red, and his deep-set eyes, blue. I'd probably be running a bunch of tests. At the Jet Propulsion Lab. He nods. Tests on. A rover. Oh. My heart skips 3 beats. For space exploration. Mars. I lean closer, not even bothering to play it like I'm not avidly interested. Is that your current project? One of them, yeah. And what are the tests for? Mostly attitude, figuring out where the ship is positioned in 3-dimensional space. Pointing to. You work on a gyroscope? Yes. My team is perfecting the gyroscope so that once the rover is on Mars it knows where it is, what it's looking at. Informs the other systems about its coordinates and movements too. My heart is now fully pitter-pattering. This sounds, wow, pornographic, almost. Exactly my jam. And you do this in Houston? At the Space Center. Usually. But I come up here when there are issues. I've been struggling with the imagery and the feed update keeps lagging even though it shouldn't, and he shakes his head as if catching himself halfway through a rant that's been playing over and over in his mind. But I finally know what he'd rather be doing. And I sure can't blame him. Did they send your entire team here? I ask. He tilts his head, like he has no idea where I'm going with this. Just me. So your team leader is not around? My team leader? Yeah. Is your boss around? He is silent for a second. 2, 3, 4. What the ah? You are the team leader, I say. He nods once. A little stiff. Almost apologetic. How old are you? I ask. 25. A pause. Next month. Whoa. I'm 22. Isn't that early to be a team leader? I'm not sure, he says, even though I can tell that he is sure, and that he is exceptional, and that even though he knows it, the thought makes him more than a little uncomfortable. I picture myself saying something flirtatious and inappropriate back, wow, handsome and smart, and wonder how he'd react. Probably not well. Not that I'm going to hit on my informational interviewee. Even I know better. Plus, he's not really my type. Okay, what's the security like at JPL? I've never been. I know it's loosely connected with Caltech, but that's about it. Depends, he says cautiously, like he still cannot follow my train of thought. What about your office? Is it a restricted area? No. Why? Awesome then. I dig into my pockets for a few dollars to leave next to my unfinished tea, and then close my fingers around Ian's wrist. His skin glows with warmth and taut muscles as I pull him up from the table, and even though he's probably twice as big and 10 times stronger than me, he lets me lead him away from the table. I let go of him the second we're out of the coffee shop, but he keeps following me. Hannah. What, where? I don't see why we can't do this weird informational interview thing, get some work done, and have fun. What? With a grin, I look at him over my shoulders. Think of it as sticking it to evil great Aunt Delphina. I doubt he fully understands, but the corner of his mouth lifts again, and that's good enough for me. See this thread right here? It's mostly about the behavior of one of the rover sensors, the Lane 200. We combine its information with the one provided by the encoders on the wheels to figure out positioning. Huh. So the sensor doesn't run constantly. Ian turns to me away from the chunk of programming code he's been showing me. We're sitting in front of his triple monitor computer side by side at his desk, which is a giant pristine expanse with a stunning view of the floodplain JPL was built on. When I mentioned how clean his workspace was, he pointed out that it's only because it's a guest office. But when I asked him if his usual desk back in Houston is any messier, he glanced away before the corner of his lip twitched. I am almost certain he's starting to think that I'm not a total waste of time. No, it doesn't run constantly. How can you tell? I gesture toward the lines of code, and the back of my hand brushes against something hard and warm, Ian's shoulder. We're sitting closer than we were at the coffee shop, but no closer than I'd feel comfortable being with one of the always unpleasant, often offensive guys in my PhD cohort. I guess my crossed knees kind of pressed against his leg earlier, but that's it. No big deal. It's in there, no. The section is in C++, which happens to be the very first language I taught myself back in high school when every single Google search for skills plus necessary plus NASA led to the sad result of programming. Python came after. Then SQL. Then Hell/S. For each language, I started out convinced that chewing on glass would surely be preferable. Then at some point along the way I began thinking in terms of functions, variables, conditional loops. A little after that, reading code became a bit like inspecting the label on the back of the conditioner bottle while showering, not particularly fun, but overall easy. I do have some talents, apparently. Yeah. He's still looking at me. Not surprised, precisely. Not impressed either. Intrigued, maybe. Yes, it is. I rest my chin on my palm and chew on my lower lip, considering the code. Is it because of the limited amount of solar power? Yes. And I bet it prevents gyro drift errors during the stationary period. Correct. He nods, and I'm momentarily distracted by his jawline. Or maybe it's the cheekbones. They're defined, angular in a way that makes me wish I had a protractor in my pocket. It's not all automated, right? Earth-based personnel can direct tools. They can, depending on the attitude. Does the onboard flight software have specific requirements? The pointing of the antenna relative to the Earth, and he stops. His eyes fall on my chewed-on lip, then quickly move away. You ask a lot of questions. I tilt my head. Bad questions. Silence. No, more silence as he studies me. Remarkably good questions. Can I ask a few more, then? I grin at him, aiming for cheeky, curious to see where it'll take us. He hesitates before nodding. Can I ask you some too? I laugh. Like what? Would you like me to list the specs of the maze-solving bot I built for my Intro to Robotics class back in college? You built a maze-solving robot? Yup. 4-wheel all-terrain, Bluetooth module. Solar-powered. Her name was Ruby, and when I set her free at a corn maze somewhere near Atlanta, she got out in about 3 minutes. Scared the crap out of the children, too. He is fully smiling now. He has a heart-stopping dimple on his left cheek and... Okay, fine, he's aggressively hot. Despite the red hair or because of it. You still have her? Nope. To celebrate, I got wasted at a bar that didn't bother to check IDs and ended up leaving her at some University of Georgia frat house. I didn't want to go back, because those places are scary, so I gave up on Ruthie and just built an electronic arm for my robotics final. I sigh and look into the mid-distance. I'll need a lot of therapy before I can become a mother. He chuckles. The sound is low, warm, maybe even shiver-inducing. I need a second to regroup. I've settled at some point on our 5-minute walk here, probably when he pulled out a pretty effortless scowl to intimidate the security guard into letting me in despite my lack of idea on the reason I can't quite pin Ian down. He is, very simply, a never-before-experienced mix of cute and overwhelmingly masculine. With a complex, layered air about him. It spells simultaneously do not piss me off because I don't fuck around and ma'am, let me carry those groceries for you. Not my usual fare, not at all. I like flirting and I like sex, and I like hooking up with people, but I'm really picky about my partners. It doesn't take a lot to turn me off someone and I almost exclusively gravitate toward the cheerful, spontaneous, fun-loving type. I'm into extroverts who love banter and are easy to talk to, the less intense the better. Ian seems to be the diametrical opposite of that, and yet, even I can see how there is something fundamentally attractive about him. Would I try to pick him up at a bar? Unclear. Will I try to pick him up after the end of this informational interview? Also unclear. I know I say I wouldn't, but things change. Okay. My question now. Mara Floyd, your cousin or something, said that you were working directly on the Curiosity team. He nods. But you were, what? 18. Around that age, yeah. Were you an intern? He pauses before shaking his head but doesn't elaborate. So you just happened to be hanging out with Mission Control. Chilling with your space bros while they landed their remote control rover on Mars. His lips twitch. I was a team member. A team member at 18. My eyebrow lifts, and he looks away. I graduated early. High school. Or college. Silence. Both. I see. He briefly scratches the side of his neck, and there again is this feeling that he's not quite used to being asked questions about himself. That most people take a look at him, decide that he's just a touch too aloof and detached, and give up on figuring him out. I study him, more curious than ever. So, were you one of those kids who was really advanced for their age and skipped half a dozen grades? And then ended up joining the workforce while still ridiculously young? And maybe your psychosocial development was still kind of ongoing, but you were never really sharing professional or academic settings with people in your age group, just much older ones who likely avoided you and were a little intimidated by your intelligence and success, which meant being the odd man out for the entirety of your formative years and having a 401k before your first date. His eyes widen. Yeah. Were you one too? I laugh. Oh no. I was a total dumbass. Still am for the most part. I just thought it might be a good guess. It fits the persona too. He doesn't come across as insecure, not quite, but he's cautious. Withdrawn. I lean back in my chair, feeling the thrill of having puzzled him out a little better. I'm usually not this dedicated to figuring out the backstory of everyone I meet, but Ian is just interesting. No. He's fascinating. So, how was it? He blinks. How was what? Being there with Mission Control when Curiosity landed. How was it? His expression instantly transforms. He's staring down at his feet as if remembering. He looks awestruck. That good? Yeah. It was. Yeah. He chuckles again. God, it really does sound great. It looked like it. From TV, I mean. You watched it. Yup. I was on the East Coast, so I stayed up late and all that. Looked up at the sky out of my bedroom window and cried a little bit. He nods, and suddenly he is studying me. Is that why you're in grad school? You want to work on future rovers? That would be amazing. But anything that space exploration will do. NASA can put your maze-solving skills to great use. His dimple is back, and I laugh. Hey, I can do other things. For instance, I point at the third monitor on the desk, the one farthest away from me. It displays a piece of code Ian hasn't walked me through yet. Want me to help you debug that? He gives me a confused look. What? It's code. It's always nice to have a second pair of eyes. You don't have to. There's an error on the 5th line. He frowns. Then he scans the code for a second. Then he turns to the monitor to me again with an even bigger frown. I brace, half expecting him to lash out defensively and deny the error. I'm familiar with the crumbling egos of men, and I'm pretty sure it's what any of the guys in my PhD class would do. But Ian surprises me. He nods, fixes the mistake I pointed out, and looks nothing but grateful. Wow. A male engineer who's not an asshole. The bar is pretty low, but I'm nevertheless impressed. Would you really be up for going through the rest of the code with me? He asks cautiously, surprising me even more. The contrast between his gentle tone and how big and guarded he is almost has me smiling. It's the workaround to fix the 2-second delay in the pointing issue. I was going to ask one of my engineers in Houston to debug, but I got you. I roll my chair closer to Ian's. My knee presses against his, and I nearly move it away automatically, but in a split-second decision, I decide to leave it there. An experiment of sorts. Testing the waters. Taking the temperature. I wait for him to shift back, but instead he studies me and says, it's a few hundred lines. I'm supposed to be helping you. Are you sure? It's fine. When I write my report, I'll just pretend I asked you a bunch of questions about your journey and make up the answers. Just to mess with him, I add, don't worry, I'll mention how having the clap did not set you back on your road to NASA. He scowls, which has me laughing, and then I'm going over the code with him for 5-10 minutes. 15. The light softens to late afternoon hues, and over an hour goes by while we're side by side, blinking at the monitors. Honestly, it's pretty basic rubber duck debugging. He's explaining out loud what he's trying to do, which helps him work through critical chunks and also figuring out better ways to go about it. But I'm a pretty happy rubber duck. I like listening to his low, even voice. I like that he seems to consider every single thing I say and never dismisses anything outright. I like that when he's thinking hard, he closes his eyes, and his lashes are crimson half-moons against his skin. I like that he builds meticulously pristine code with no memory leakage, and I like that when his biceps brushes against my shoulder, all I feel is solid warmth. I like his short, crisp functions, and the way he smells clean and masculine and a bit dark. Okay. So he's not my type. I do like him though. Would Mara mind it if I shamelessly offered myself to her kin at the informational interview she kindly set up? I would normally just go for it, but this friendship business can be a bit of a burden. That said, maybe I can safely assume that she won't care, considering that she doesn't seem to know how exactly she and Ian are related. Plus, she's a generous soul. She'd want her friend and her cousin or something to get laid. Did you get randomly assigned to the attitude and position estimation team? I ask him when we get to the last few lines of code. No, he lets out a small laugh. His profile is a work of near perfection, even with the broken nose. Clawed my way there actually. Oh. He saves and closes our work with a few rapid keystrokes. For curiosity, I joined the team pretty late into the development stage, and I mostly focused on launch. Did you like it? A lot. He angles his chair to face me. Our knees, elbows, shoulders have been brushing so much the closeness feels familiar by now. So does the liquid warmth under my belly button. But after that I began working on Perseverance and I asked for a change. Something actually related to the rover being on Mars as opposed to 3 hours in Cape Canaveral. So they put you on A and P. First, I joined the NASA expedition to Norway's Mars analog site. I inhale audibly. A mace. The Arctic Mars Analog Smallbar Expedition, a mace for friends, is what happens when a bunch of nerds travel to Norway in the Bokjordan area of Svalbard. One might think that the North Pole has nothing to do with space, but because of all the volcanic activity and glaciers, it's actually the place on Earth most similar to Mars. It even has one-of-a-kind carbonate spherules that are almost identical to the ones we found on meteorites of Martian origin. NASA researchers like to use it as a location to test the functionality of equipment they plan to send on space exploration missions, collect samples, examine fun science questions that can prepare astronauts for future space missions. I want to be part of it so bad, a shiver runs down my spine. Yup. When I came back I asked for an A&P placement, which apparently everyone wanted. To the point that the mission leader sent out a NASA-wide email asking whether we'd get double pay and free beer. Did you? I laugh at the look he gives me. He is just so hilariously, deliciously teasable. Why did everyone want to be part of that team anyway? He shrugs. I'm not sure why everyone else did. I assume because it's challenging. Lots of high-risk, high-reward projects. But for me it was. He glances out of the window at a maple tree in the Japel campus. Actually, no, I think he might be looking up. At the sky. It just felt like he trails off, as though not sure how to continue. Like it was as close as possible to actually being on Mars. With the rover. I ask him. His eyes return to me. Yeah. He seems surprised. Like I managed to put something elusive into words. Yeah, that's exactly it. I nod, because I get it. The idea of helping build something that will explore Mars, the idea of being able to control where it goes and what it does. That does it for me too. Ian and I study each other for a few seconds in silence, both of us smiling faintly. Long enough for the idea that's been bouncing in my head to solidify once and for all. Yeah. I'm gonna go for it. Sorry, Mara. I like your cousin or something a little too much to pass this up. Okay, I do have a career question for you. To save our informational interview appearances. Shoot. So, I graduate with my PhD. Which should take me about 4 more years. That's a while, he says, his tone a bit unreadable. Yes, it feels like forever. Not that long. So I graduate and I decide that I want to work at NASA and not for some weirdo billionaire who treats space exploration like it's his own homemade penis enlargement remedy. Ian's nod is pained. Wise. What would make me look like a strong candidate? What does a great application package look like? He mulls it over. I'm not sure. For my team, I would usually hire internally. But I'm almost certain I still have my application materials on my old laptop. I could send them to you. Okay. Perfect. Great. The opening I was waiting for. My heart rate picks up. Warmth twists in my lower stomach. I lean forward with a smile, feeling like I'm finally in my element. This is what I know best. Depending on how busy I am with school or work or binge watching K-dramas, I do this about once a week. Which amounts to quite a bit of practice. Maybe I could come to your place. I say, finding the sweet spot between comically suggestive and let's get together to play Cards Against Humanity. And you could show me. I meant in Houston. My laptop's in Houston. So you didn't bring your 2010 laptop to Pasadena? He smiles. Knew I'd forgotten something. Sure did. I meet his eyes squarely. Lean half an inch closer. Then maybe I can still come to your place, and we could do something else. He gives me a half-puzzled look. Do what? I press my lips together. Okay. Maybe I overestimated my flirting skills. Have I, though? I don't think so. Really? I ask amused. Am I that bad? I'm sorry, I don't follow. Ian's expression is all arrested confusion, like I just suddenly started talking in an Australian accent. Bad at what? At hitting on you, Ian. I can pinpoint the precise, exact moment the meaning of my words sinks into the language part of his brain. He blinks a few times. Then his big body goes still in a tight, impossible vibrating way, like his internal software is buffering through an unpredictable set of updates. He looks absolutely, almost charmingly mystified, and something occurs to me. I've struck up flirtatious conversations with dozens of guys and girls at parties, bars, laundromats, gyms, bookstores, seminars, muddy obstacle races, greenhouses, even on one memorable occasion in the waiting room of a Planned Parenthood inn. No one has ever been this clueless. No one. So maybe he was just pretending not to get it. Maybe he was hoping I'd back off. Shit. I'm sorry. I straighten and roll my chair back, giving him a few inches of space. I'm making you uncomfortable. No. No, he's finally rebooting. Shaking his head. No, you aren't, I'm just a bit freaked out. I smile reassuringly, trying to signal that it's okay. I can take a no. I'm a big girl. It's fine. Let's forget I said anything. But do email me your application package once you're back home, please. I promise I won't reply with unsolicited nudes. No, it's not that. He closes his eyes and pinches the bridge of his nose. His cheekbones look rosier than before. His lips move, trying to form words for a few seconds until he settles on, it's just unexpected. Oh. I tilt my head. Why? I thought I'd been laying it on pretty thick. Because. His large hand gestures in my direction. He swallows, and I watch his throat work. Just. Look at you. I actually do it. I look down at myself, taking in my crossed legs, my khaki shorts, my plain black tee. My body is in its usual condition, tall, wiry, a bit scrawny, olive-skinned. I even shaved this morning. Maybe. I can't remember. Point is, I look okay. So I say it, I look okay, which should sound confident, but comes out a bit petulant. It's not that I think I'm hot shit, but I refuse to be insecure about my appearance. I like myself. Historically, the people I've wanted to sleep with have liked me too. My body does its job as a means to an end. It manages to let me kayak around California lakes without muscle aches the following day, and it digests lactose like it's an Olympic discipline. That's all that matters. But his reply is, "You don't look okay," and no. Really. My tone is icy. Is Ian Floyd trying to imply that he's out of my reach? Because if so, I will slap him. How do I look, then? Just, he swallows again. Women like you don't usually. Women like me. Wow. Sounds like I'll actually have to slap him. What's that? Because. Beautiful. You are very, very beautiful. Probably the most. And you're obviously smart and funny, so he gives me a helpless look, suddenly looking less like a genius NASA team leader built like a cedar tree and more boyish. Young. Is this some kind of joke? I study him through squinting eyes, revising my earlier assessment. Perhaps my conclusions were premature, and it's not quite correct that no one can be this clueless. Perhaps someone can. Ian, for instance. Ian, who could probably make good money as a stock photo model, tags, hot guy, ginger, massive. I saw about 4 people check him out on our way here, but he apparently has no idea that he could be fan cast to play the hot Weasley brother. Absolutely zero awareness of how glorious he is. I grin, suddenly charmed. Can I ask you a question? I roll myself closer, and I'm not sure when that happened, but he angled his chair so that my knees end up slotted between his. Nice. It's a bit forward. He looks down at our touching legs and nods. As usual, only once. Can I kiss you? Like right now? He stares. Then blinks. Then mouths something that's not a word. My grin widens. That's not no, is it? No, he shakes his head. His eyes are fixed on my lips, the black of his pupils swallowing the blue. It's not. Okay, then. It's pretty simple, standing from my chair and leaning forward on his. My palms find the armrests and press against them, and for a long moment I stay right there, caging this bear-sized man who could flick me away with his little finger but doesn't. Instead, he looks up at me like I'm wondrous and beautiful and awe-inspiring, like I'm a gift, like he's a bit dumbstruck. Like he really wants me to kiss him. So I close that last inch, and I do. And it's kind of awkward, to be honest. Not bad. Just a little hesitant. His lips part in a gasp when they touch mine, and for a split second, a terrifying thought occurs to me. It's his first kiss. Is it? Oh my god, it's his first kiss. Am I really giving someone their first? Ian angles his head, pushes his mouth against mine, and it destroys my train of thought. I'm not sure how he manages, but whatever he's doing with his lips and teeth feels massively, aggressively right. I whimper when his tongue meets mine. He growls in response, something rumbly and deep in his throat. Okay. This is no first kiss. This is a fucking masterpiece. He's probably 200 pounds of muscles and I have no clue whether the chair can hold us both, but I decide to live dangerously. I straddle Ian's lap, feeling his sharp inhale vibrate through my body. For a suspended second our lips part and his eyes hold mine, like we're both waiting for every piece of furniture in the room to collapse. But Japel must be investing in sturdy decor. That was high risk, high reward, I say, and I'm surprised at how short my breath is already. The room is silent, bathed in warm light. I let out a single shaky laugh and I realize where Ian's hand is, hovering half an inch above my waist. Warm. Eager. Ready to snap. Can I? He asks. Yes. I laugh into his mouth. You can touch me. It's the whole point of. I don't get to finish, because the second he has permission his hands are everywhere, one on my nape, pulling my lips into his, the other on the small of my back. The moment my chest presses against his, he does another of those low, rough sounds, but 10 times deeper, like it comes from his very core. He's all scratchy stubble, warm unwieldy flesh, and in the corner of my eyes I see only red, so much red. I'm in love with your freckles, I say, right before nipping at one on his jaw. I thought about licking them the moment I saw you. I make my way to the hollow of his ear. He exhales sharp. When I saw you, I suck on the skin of his throat, and he stutters. I thought you were a little too beautiful, he finishes, breathless. His hands are traveling under my shirt up my spine, cautiously tracing the edges of my bra. He smells magnificent, clean and serious and warm. Too beautiful for what? For everything. Too beautiful to look at even. His grip on my waist tightens. Hannah, you. I am grinding my groin against his. Which is probably the reason we both sound like we're running a marathon. And in my defense, I really only meant for this to be a kiss, but yeah. No. I'm not stopping, and judging from the way his fingers dip into the back of my shorts to cup my ass cheek and press me tighter into his hard cock, he's not planning to either. Does anyone else use this office? I ask. I'm not shy, but this is. Good. No interruptions please, good. I don't want to wait till we get home, good. I'm going to come in about 2 minutes, good. He shakes his head, and I could cry of happiness, but I don't have time. It's like we were playing before, and now we're in earnest. We're barely kissing, uncoordinated, unfocused, just grinding against each other, and I chase the feeling of his body against mine, the high of being so close, his erection between my legs as we both make hushed, grunting obscene noises as we both try to get closer to get more contact, skin, heat, friction, friction, friction. I need more friction. Shit. I cannot get enough. It's not a good position, and I hate this stupid chair, and this is driving me insane. I let out a loud, infuriated groan and sink my teeth deep into his neck, like I am made of heat and frustration, and somehow, Ian knows exactly what I need. Because he stands from the cursed chair with a muted, it's okay, I've got you. He takes me right with him and does something that could technically qualify as destroying NASA property to make enough room for us. A moment later I'm sitting on the desk, and all of a sudden we can both move like we want to. He opens my legs with his palms and slots his own right between them, and finally. The friction is this is precisely what I asked for, precisely what I needed. Yes, I breathe out. Yeah. I don't even need to move my hips. His hand slides down to grip my ass, and he somehow knows exactly how to angle me, how the hem of my shorts can brush against my clit. Like this. I feel his cock iron hard on my hip, and I make mewling, embarrassing, pleading sounds into the hollow of his throat, murmuring incomprehensibly about how good this is, how grateful I am, how I'm going to do the same for him when we finally fuck, how I'm going to do whatever he wants. Stop, he pants into my mouth, virgin, a little desperate. You need to be quiet, or I'm going to. I just want to. I laugh against his cheek, greedy, hushed. My thighs are starting to shake. There is a liquid pressing heat swelling in my abdomen. Want to what? I just want to make you come. It sends me right over the edge. Into something that's nothing like my usual, run-of-the-mill orgasm. Those tend to start like small fractures and then slowly, gradually deepen into something lovely and relaxing. Those are fun, good fun, but this pleasure is sudden and violent. It splinters into me like a wonderful, terrible explosion, new and frightening and fantastic, and it goes on, as though every heart-stopping, delicious second of it is being squeezed out of me. I screw my eyes shut, clutch Ian's shoulders, and whimper into his throat, listening to the hushed fuck. Fuck, he mouths into my collarbone. I was so sure I knew what my body was capable of, but this feels somewhere well beyond it. And somehow, on top of knowing exactly how to get me there, Ian also knows when to stop. The very moment it all becomes unbearable, his arms tighten around me, and his guy becomes a solid, still weight between mine. I twine my arms around his neck, hide my face in his throat, and wait for my body to recover. Well, I say. My voice is raspier than I ever remember hearing it. There's a wireless keyboard on the floor, cables dangling by my thigh, and if I move even half an inch back, I'll destroy one, maybe 2 monitors. Well, I repeat. I let out a peal of winded laughter against his skin. You okay? He asks, pulling back to meet my eyes. His hands are trembling slightly against my back. Because I assume I came. And he didn't. Which is very unfair. I just had a life-defining orgasm, and can't really remember my own name, but even in this state I can grasp the injustice of it all. I'm great. I laugh again. You. He smiles. I'm pretty great to be. I drag my hand down between us, palm flush against the front of his jeans, and his mouth snaps shut. Okay. So he has a big cock. To exactly no one's surprise. This man is going to be fantastic in bed. Phenomenal. The best sex I've ever had with a dude. And I've had a lot. What do you want? I ask. His eyes are dark, unseeing. I cup my hand around the outline of his erection, rub the heel of my palm against the length, arch up to whisper in the curve of his ear, can I go down on you? The noise Ian makes is rough and guttural, and it takes me about 3 seconds to realize that he's already coming, groaning into my skin, trapping my hand between our bodies. I feel him shudder, and this big man coming apart against me, utterly lost and helpless in front of his own pleasure, is by far the most erotic experience of my entire life. I want to get him into a bed. I want hours, days with him. I want to make him feel the way he's feeling right now, but 100-fold stronger, 100 million more times. I'm sorry, he slurs. What? I lean back to look at his face. Why? That was pitiful. He pulls me back to bury his face in my throat. It's followed by a lick, and a bite, and oh my god, the sex is going to be off the charts. Earth-shattering. It was amazing. Let's do it again. Let's go to my place. Or let's just lock the door. He laughs and kisses me, different from before, deep but gentle and meandering in. It's not really, in my experience, the type of kiss people share after sex. In my experience, after sex people wash up, put their clothes back on, then wave goodbye and go to the nearest Starbucks to get a cake pop. But this is nice because Ian is an excellent kisser and he smells good, he tastes good, he feels good and... Can I buy you dinner? He asks against my lips. Before we... I shake my head. The tips of our noses brush against each other. No need. I'd like to, Hannah. Nah, I kiss him again. Once. Deep. Glorious. I don't do that. You don't do another kiss, what? Dinner. Kiss. Again. Well, I amend, I do eat. But I don't do dinner dates. Ian pulls back his expression, curious. Why no dinner dates? I shrug, wishing we were still kissing. I don't date in general. You don't date. At all. Nope. His expression is suddenly withdrawn again, so I smile and add, but I'm very happy to come to your place anyway. No need to be dating for that, right? He takes a step back, a large one, like he wants to put some physical space between us. The front of his jeans is a mess. I want to clean him up. Why? Why don't you date? Really? I laugh. You want to hear about my socio-emotional trauma after we did? I gesture between us this. He nods, serious and a little stiff, and I sober up. Seriously. He really wants that. He wants me to explain to him that I don't really have the time or the emotional availability for any kind of romantic entanglement. That I can't really imagine anyone sticking around for something that's not sex once they really get to know me. That I've long since realized that the longer people are with me, the more likely they are to find out that I'm not as smart as they think, as pretty, as funny. Honestly, I know that my best bet is to keep people at arm's length, so that they never find out what I'm actually like. Which is, incidentally, a bit of a bitch. I'm just not good at caring about anything, really. It took me about 1.5 decades to find something I was truly passionate about. This friendship experiment I'm doing with Mara and Sadie is still very much that, an experiment in. Oh god. Does Ian want to date? He doesn't even live here. So you're saying, I scratch my temples, coming down fast from my post-orgasm high. You're saying you're not interested in having sex? He closes his eyes in something that really doesn't look like a no. Definitely doesn't look like a lack of interest. But what he says is, I like you. I laugh. I noticed. It's uncommon for me to like someone this much. I like you too. I shrug. Shouldn't we hang out then? Isn't that good enough? He looks away. Down to his shoes. If I spend more time with you, I'm only going to like you more. Nath, I snort. That's not the way it usually works. It does. It will for me. He sounds so solidly, irrefutably sure, I cannot do anything but stare at him. His lips are bestung, and everything about him is beautiful, and he looks so quietly, stoically devastated at the idea of fucking me with no strings attached that I should probably find this comical, but the truth is that I can't remember ever being this attracted to someone else, and my body is vibrating for his, and maybe you could go out with him. Just this once. An exception. Maybe you could try it out. Maybe it could work. Maybe you two will. What? No. No. What the fuck? Just the fact that I'm contemplating it scares the shit out of me. No. I'm not like that. These things are a waste of time and energy. I'm busy. I'm not cut out for this stuff. I'm sorry, I force myself to say. It's not even a lie. I'm pretty fucking sorry right now. I don't think it's a good idea. Okay, he says after a long moment. Accepting. A bit sad. Okay. If you change your mind. About dinner, that is. Let me know. Okay. I nod. When are you leaving? What's my deadline? I add, attempting some lightheartedness. It doesn't matter. I can. I travel here a lot, and he shakes his head. You can change your mind whenever. No deadline. Oh. Well, if you change your mind about fucking. He exhales a laugh, which sounds a little like a pained groan, and for a moment I feel the compulsion to explain myself. I want to tell him, it's not you. It's me. But I know how that would sound, and I know better than to put the words out there. So we regard each other for a few seconds, and then there's nothing left to say, is there? My body goes through the motions automatically. I slide off the desk, take a moment to straighten the monitors behind me, the mouse, the keyboards, the cable, and when I walk past Ian through the door, he follows me with his solemn, sad eyes, running his palm over his jaw. The last words I hear from him are, "It was really good to meet you, Hannah." I think I should say it back, but there's an unfamiliar weight in my chest, and I can't quite bring myself to do it. So I make do with a small smile and a half-hearted wave. I stuff my hands in my pockets while my body is still frumming with what I left behind, and wander slowly back to the Caltech campus thinking about red hair and missed opportunities. That night, when I get an email from Ian Floyd at nasa.gov, my heart stumbles all over itself. But it's just an empty email, no text, not even an automatic signature. Just an attachment with his NASA application from a few years ago, together with a handful of other people's more recent ones that he must have gotten from his friends and colleagues, a few more examples to send me. Well, he'll make for a great boyfriend, I tell myself, leaning back in my bed and staring up at the ceiling. There is a weird green thing in one corner that I suspect might be mold. Mara keeps telling me I should just move out of this shivel and find a place with her and Sadie, but I don't know. Seems like we get too close. A big commitment. It might get messy. He'll make for a great boyfriend. For someone who deserves to have one. The following day, when Mara asks me about my meeting with her cousin or something, I say only uneventful, and I don't even know why. I don't like lying, and I like lying to someone who's rapidly becoming a friend even less, but I can't make myself say any more than that. 2 weeks later, I turn in a reflection paper as part of my water resources class requirements. I must admit, Dr. Harding, that I initially got this assignment would be a total waste of time. I've known I wanted to end up at NASA for years, and I've known that I wanted to work with robotics and space exploration for just as long. However, after meeting with Ian Floyd, I have realized that I'd love to work specifically on attitude and position estimation of Mars rovers. In conclusion, not a waste of time, or at least not a total one. I get an A for the class. And in the following years, I don't let myself think about Ian too much. But whenever I rewatch video recordings of Mission Control celebrating Curiosity's landing, I cannot help but look for the tall, red-haired man in the back of the room. And whenever I find him, I feel the ghost of something squeezed tight inside my chest. Chapter 3. Svalbard Islands, Norway. Present. They said they couldn't send first responders. My breath, dry and white, fogs the black shell of my satellite phone. Because Svalbard in February is well into the -Celsius. Disturbingly close to the -Fahrenheit too, and this morning is no exception. They said it was too dangerous. I continue that the winds are too extreme. As if to prove my point, a half-hissing, half-howling sound weaves through what I've begun to think of as my crevasse. And as far as crevasses go, it's a good one to get stuck in. Relatively shallow. The western wall is nicely angled just enough to allow the sunlight to filter in, which is probably the only reason I have yet to freeze to death or get horrible frostbite. The downside, though, is that at this time of the year there are only about 5 hours of light per day. And they're just about to run out. Avalanche danger is set at the highest level, and it's not safe for anyone to come out to get me, I add, speaking right into the sat phone's mic. Repeating what Dr. Merrill, my team leader, told me a few hours ago during my last communication with AMACE, NASA's home base here in Norway. It was right before he reminded me that I'd been the one to choose this. That I'd known what the risks of my mission were, and I still decided to undertake it. That the path to space exploration is full of pain and self-sacrifice. That it was my fault for falling in an icy hole in the ground and spraining my fucking ankle. Well, he did not say that. Fucking, or fault. He did, however, make sure that I was aware that no one would be able to come help me until tomorrow and that I needed to be strong. Even though, of course, we both knew what the results of a match between me and an overnight snowstorm would be. Storm 100. Hannah Arroyo, dead. The weather's not that bad. A wave of static almost drains the voice on the other side of the line. Ian Floyd's voice. Because for some reason, he's here. Coming. For me. It's a storm, Ian. Are you please, tell me you're not just strolling outdoors when the worst storm of the year is just hours from starting. I'm not. A pause. It's more of a brisk walk. I close my eyes. In a storm. A blizzard. Winds of at least 35 miles per hour. Heavy snowfall and no visibility. You might be wasted in engineering. What? You're really good at meteorology stuff. I cannot feel my legs. My teeth are chattering. Every time I breathe, my skin feels like it's been chewed on by a horde of piranhas. And yet, I find the strength to roll my eyes. At least the cranky bitch inside my heart is holding strong. You'd love it, wouldn't you? If I were busy giving the weather on local news instead of at NASA with you. The winds are blowing holes through my eardrums. I honestly have no idea how I can hear a smile in his nav. He's insane. He cannot be here in Norway. He isn't even supposed to be in Europe. Did Amaze change their mind on sending help? I ask. Have the storm forecasts changed? They haven't. Whenever the static dips, I hear a low, oddly familiar noise through the sat phone. Ian's breathing, I suspect, heavy and loud and faster than normal. Like he's grunting his way through hazardous ground. You're approximately 30 minutes from my current location. Once I get to you, we'll have a 60-minute trek to safety. Which means that we should be able to just barely avoid the storm. The second he says the word trek, my stupid brain decides to attempt to rotate my ankle. Which leads to me biting my chapped, frozen lips to swallow a whimper. A terrible idea, as it turns out. Ian, nothing of what you just said makes sense. Really? He sounds amused. How? Why? Nothing. How do you even know where I am? GPS tracker. On your Iridium phone. It's impossible. Amaze said they couldn't activate the tracker. The sensors aren't working. Amaze isn't within range, and the coming storm was probably interfering. A strong gust of wind lifts, and for a painfully gelid moment it's everywhere, whooshing around me, piercing inside my lungs, making its way into my ears. I try to curl my body away, but it does nothing to stop the freezing air. I dig myself only deeper into the snow and jostle my stupid ankle. Fuck. Amaze is over 3 hours from my Krova location. If you really do get here in 30 minutes, we're not going to make it there in time to avoid the storm. You are not going to make it back in time, and I'm not going to let something terrible happen to you just because I'm not coming from Amaze, he says. And that's not where we're going. But how did you even access my GPS tracker if you're not at Amaze? A pause. I'm good with computers. Are you saying you hacked your way into? They mentioned you're injured. How bad is it? I glance at my boots. Ice crystals have begun to crust around the soles. Just a few scrapes. And a sprain. I think I could maybe walk, but I don't know about 60 minutes. I don't know about 60 seconds. And on this terrain, you won't have to walk at all. I frown, even though my brow is almost frozen. How will I get to wherever we're going if? Do you have ascenders? Yes. But again, I don't know if I can climb. No problem. I'll just haul you out. It's too dangerous. The terrain around the edge might collapse, and you'd fall in too. I let out a choppy breath. Ian, I cannot let you. Don't worry, I'm not in the habit of falling inside crevasses. Neither am I. You sure about that? Okay. Fine. I walked right into this one. Ian, I cannot let you do this. I take a shuddering, frigid breath. If it's because you feel responsible for this. If you're risking your life because you think it's somehow your fault I ended up here, then you really shouldn't. You know that I have no one to blame but me, and I am about to start climbing, he interrupts distractedly, like I wasn't in the dead middle of an impassioned speech. Climbing. What are you climbing? I'll put away my phone, but get in touch if anything happens. Ian, I really don't think you should. Hannah. The shock of hearing my name in Ian's voice, cocooned by the whistle of the wind and through the metallic line of my sat phone, no less, has me instantly shutting up. Until he continues. Just relax and think of Mars, okay? I'll be there soon. Chapter 4. Johnson Space Center, Houston, Texas. 1 year ago. It's not that I'm shocked to see him. That would be, honestly, pretty idiotic. Too idiotic even for me, a well-known occasional idiot. I might not have seen Ian Floyd in over 4 years, yup, since the day I had the best sex, and it wasn't even really sex, god what a waste of my life, and then barely forced myself to wave goodbye at him while the mahogany of his office door closed in my face. It might have been a while, but I've kept up with his whereabouts through the use of highly sophisticated technology and cutting-edge research tools. i.e., Google. As it turns out, when you're one of NASA's top engineers, people write shit about you. I swear I don't look up Ian plus Floyd twice a week or anything like that, but I do get curious every once in a while, and the internet offers so much information in exchange for so little effort. That's how I found out that when the former chief resigned for health reasons, Ian was chosen as head of engineering for Tenacity, the rover that landed safely in the Duvall-Coolers crater just last year. He even gave 60 Minutes an interview in which he mostly came across as serious, competent, handsome, humble, reserved. For some reason, it made me think of the way he'd grown into my skin. His vice-like grip on my hips, his guy moving between my legs. It made me remember that he'd wanted to take me to dinner, and that I'd actually appallingly, unfathomably been tempted to say yes. I watched the entire thing on YouTube. Then I scrolled down to read the comments and realized that a good 2/3 were from users who'd noticed exactly how serious, competent, handsome, humble, reserved, and likely well-endowed Ian was. I hastened to click out, feeling caught with my entire torso in the cookie jar. Whatever. I think I expected my Google search to lead to more personal stuff too. Maybe a Facebook account with pictures of adorable ginger toddlers. Or one of those wedding websites with overproduced pictures and the story of how the couple met. But no. The closest was a triathlon he did about 2 years ago near Houston. He didn't place particularly well, but he did finish it. As far as Google is concerned, that's the only non-work related activity Ian has partaken in during the last 4 years. But that's really beside the point, which is, I know quite a bit about Ian Floyd's career accomplishments and I am well aware that he's still at NASA. Therefore, it makes no sense for me to be shocked to see him. And I'm not. I'm really not. It's just that with over 3,000 people working at the Johnson Space Center, I figured I'd run into him around my 3rd week on the job. Maybe even during my 3rd month. I definitely did not expect to see him on my first day, in the middle of the freaking new employee orientation. And I definitely didn't anticipate that he'd spot me immediately and stare for a long time, as though remembering exactly who I am, as though not wondering why I look familiar or struggling to place me. Which? He isn't. He clearly isn't. Ian appears at the entrance of the conference room where the new hires have been parked to wait for the next speaker. With a slightly aggravated expression, he looks around for someone, notices me, chatting with Alexis, about a millisecond after I notice him. He pauses for a moment, wide-eyed. Then weaves through the clusters of people chatting around the table, marching toward me with long strides. His eyes stay fixed on mine and he looks confident and pleasantly surprised, like a guy picking up his girlfriend at the airport after she spent 4 months abroad studying the courtship habits of the humpback whale. But it has nothing to do with me. It's not because of me. It cannot be because of me, right? But Ian stops just a couple of feet away from Alexis, studies me with a small smile for a couple of seconds longer than is customary, and then says Hannah. That's it. That's all he says. My name. And I really didn't want to see him. I really figured it would be weird to be with him again, after our not quite orgasmless first and only meeting. But it's not. Not at all. It just feels natural, nearly irresistible to smile at him, push away from the table and up on my toes for a hug, fill my nostrils with his clean scent and say against his shoulder, "Hey you." His hands press briefly into my spine, and we fit together just like 4 years ago. Then, a second later, we both pull back. I don't do blushing, not ever, but my heart is beating fast and there's a curious heat creeping up my chest. Maybe it's because this should be weird. Right. 4 years ago, I came on to him. Then I came on him. Then I turned him down when he asked me to spend orgasmless, space explorationless time with him. That's what I wanted to avoid, the male, awkward ego-wounded reaction I was sure Ian would have. But now he's here disarmingly pleased to see me, and I just feel happy to be in his presence like I did back when we coded our afternoon away. He looks a bit older. The day-old stubble is about 1 week old now, and maybe he's gotten even bigger. For the rest, though, he's just himself. Hair's red, eyes are blue, freckles are everywhere. I'm being forcibly reminded of his uniform initialization in C++ and of his teeth on my skin. You made it, he says, like I really did just get off a jet plane. You're here. He's smiling. I smile, too, and furrow my brow. What? You didn't think I'd actually graduate? Wasn't sure you'd ever pass your water resources class? I burst out laughing. What? Just because you saw me with your own eyes, put zero effort into my assignment. That did play a role, yeah. You should read the stuff I BS about you in that report. Yes. What STDs did I have to battle to get to where I am today? What STDs did you not? He sighs. A throat clears and we both turn. Oh, right. Alexis is also here. Looking between us for some reason with saucer eyes. Oh, Ian, this is Alexis. She's starting today too. Alexis, this is Ian Floyd, she says, sounding vaguely breathless. I'm a fan. Ian seems vaguely alarmed, as though the idea of having fans befuddles him. Alexis doesn't seem to notice and asks me, you two know each other? Oh. Yeah, we do. We had I gesture vaguely. A thing. Years ago. A thing. Alexis's eyes widen even more. Oh no, I didn't mean that kind of thing. We did some kind of one of those, what are they called? An informational interview, Ian patiently provides. An informational interview. Alexis sounds skeptical. She stares at Ian, who is still staring at me. Yeah. Kind of. It devolved into what? Us almost fucking on NASA property. You wish, Hannah. A debugging session, Ian says. Then clears his throat. I let out a laugh. Right. That. Debugging session. Alexis sounds even more skeptical. That doesn't sound fun. Oh, it was Ian says. He's still staring at me. Like he's found his long missing house keys and is afraid he'll lose them again if he looks away. Yeah. I cannot help making my smile just a tad suggestive. An experiment. I seem to do lots of those when he's around. Lots of fun. Right. Ian finally looks away, smiling the same way. Lots. How did you guys meet? Alexis asks, more suspicious by the second. Oh, my best friend is Ian's cousin or something. Ian nods. How is he? Briefly stumbles on the name. I want to say Melissa. Mara. Your cousin's name is Mara. Keep up, will you? I fail to sound stern. Have you not talked to her since she put us in touch? I don't believe we talked back then either. Everything happened through. Great Aunt Delphina Bright. How's the Home Depot video? Lowe's. I hear it's making a resurgence since Uncle Mitch started hosting Thanksgiving. I laugh. Well, Mara is great. She also graduated with her PhD. And recently moved to DC. To work for the EPA. No interest in space stuff. Just, saving the Earth. Oh. He doesn't seem too impressed. It's a good fight. But you're glad someone else is shouldering it while you and I spend our days launching cool gadgets into space. He chuckles. More or less. Okay, this is very Alexis, again. We both turn to her, her eyes are narrow, and she sounds shrill. Honestly, I keep forgetting she's here. I've never seen two people, she gestures between us. You guys are clearly, Ian and I exchange a baffled glance. I'm going to leave you to it, she says inscrutably. Then she turns on her heel and Ian and I are alone. Kind of. We're in a room full of people but alone. Well. Hi, I say. Hey. The pitch is lower. More intimate. I kind of expected this would be unpleasant. This. I point back and forth between us. Seeing you again. After the way we left off. He cocks his head. Why? I'm not sure how to articulate it, that my experience is that men who have been rejected by women can often be scary in a million different ways. It doesn't matter anyway. It sounds like he put what happened between us behind him the second I stepped out of his office. Doesn't matter. Since it's not unpleasant, that is. Ian nods once. Like I remember from years ago. What team have you been assigned to? A&P. You don't say. He sounds pleased. Which is new, mostly. My parents reacted to the news that I was hired by NASA in their usual way, showing disappointment that I did not go into medicine like my siblings. Sadie and Mara were always supportive and happy for me when I got my dream job, but they don't care enough about space exploration to fully grasp the significance of where I ended up. Ian knows. And even though he's now a big shot, and A&P is not his team anymore, it still makes me feel warm and tingly. Yeah, this random guy I once met told me it was the best team. Wise words. But I'm not going to start with the team right away, because I've managed to get them to pick me for a mace. His smile is so unabashedly, genuinely happy for me, my heart leaps in my throat. A mace. Yup. Hannah, that's fantastic. It is. A mace is the shit, and the selection process to take part in an expedition was brutal, to the point that I'm not quite sure how I made it in. Probably sheer luck. Dr. Merrill, one of the expedition leaders, was looking for someone with experience in gas chromatograph mass spectrometry. Which I happened to have due to some side projects my PhD advisor foisted upon me. At the time, I aggressively bitched and moaned my way through them. In hindsight, I feel a bit guilty. Have you been there? I ask Ian, even though I already know the answer, because he mentioned a mace when we met. Plus I've seen his CV, and some pictures from past expeditions. In one, taken over the summer of 2019, he's wearing a dark thermal shirt and kneeling in front of a rover, squinting at its robotic arm. There is a young, pretty woman standing right behind him, elbows propped on his shoulders, smiling in the direction of the camera. I've thought about that picture more than just a couple of times. Imagined Ian asking the woman for dinner. Wondered if, unlike me, she was able to say yes. I've been there twice, winter and summer. Both great. Winter was considerably more miserable, but he stops. Wait, isn't the next expedition leaving? In 3 days. For 5 months. I watch him nod and digest the information. He still looks happy for me, but it's a little subdued. A split second of disappointment, maybe. What? I ask. Nothing. He shakes his head. It would have been nice to catch up. We still can, I say, maybe a bit too fast. I'm not leaving till Thursday. Want to go out and not get dinner, surely? His smile is teasing. I remember you don't eat with other people. Right. The truth is that things have changed. Not that now I go out for dates, I very much still don't. And not that I've magically become an emotionally available person, I'm still very much not. But somewhere in the last couple of years, the whole Tinder game got first a bit old, then a bit tiresome, then eventually a bit lonely. These days, I either focus on work or on Mara and Sadie. I do drink coffee though, I say on impulse. Even though I find coffee disgusting. Iced tea, Ian says, somehow remembering my 4-year-old order. I can't though. My heart sinks. You can't. Is he seeing someone? Not interested. It doesn't have to be a date, I hasten to say, but we're interrupted. Ian, you're here. The HR rep who's been showing the new hires around appears at his side. Thank you for making time, I know you need to be at JPO by tonight. Everyone. She claps her hands. Please, take a seat. Ian Floyd, the current chief of engineering on the Mars exploration program, is going to tell you about some of NASA's ongoing projects. Oh. Oh. Ian and I exchange one long glance. For just a moment, he looks like he wants to tell me one last thing. But the HR rep leads him to the head of the conference table, and there's either not enough time, or it's not something that's important enough to be said. Half a minute later, I sit and listen to his clear, calm voice as he talks about the many projects he's overseeing, heart tight and heavy in my chest for reasons I cannot figure out. 20 minutes later, I lock eyes with him for the last time just as someone knocks to remind him that his plane will board in less than 2 hours. And a little over 6 months later, when I finally meet him again, I hate him. I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, and I don't hesitate to let him know.